Hey, what is up? This is the combo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario. OakRidgeFord.com. I'm Norm, along with Mike. It is Sunday, December 12th, 2021. The Leafs coming off a 5-4 win over the lowly Blackhawks at Scotiabank Arena. 7-2-1 in their past 10, 40 points, among the best in the league. But Mr. Augello is going to lay out the case as to why we shouldn't get too excited. Season's greetings, by the way, Mr. A, if it's not too early to express that sentiment to you.
Good morning, Norm. It's a bad hair day. That's why I'm wearing the Arenas hat. Although I should say, being my age, it's good that I still have hair.
Do you? Did you want to review?
It's
OG's Commerce. Can you see that anywhere?
Yeah,
okay, go ahead.
Okay. Well, okay. Yes, they're 7-2-1 in their last 10. Yes, they're tied with Florida for the tops in the Atlantic Division. But if you talk to Sheldon Keefe and if you look at what the results of the last few games, the problems that we've seen off and on are creeping back into the Leafs game, and that is giveaways. I saw
17 last night.
Yeah, I mean, at one point in the middle of the third period, when they were either 4-3 or tied, the giveaways were 14-4 for the in favor of the Leafs, and that's not a category you want to be leading in. And all you needed to know from last night, and I tweeted it out right after, and the Hockey Night in Canada cameras caught it beautifully. David Kampf scores the winning goal on a basically a lucky situation. Hits off the glass, comes out, Kampf is in front of the net, goal. Kyle Dubas is like shaking his head because he knew that was just dumb luck. The way the team had played, leading 4-1 and giving up 3 goals to the Blackhawks, who, they played better under Derek King after they fired Jeremy Colleton. I mean, they were lucky to win that game, and great. Sometimes you need luck, but right now, I would say after they beat Colorado 8-3, that may have been the worst thing to happen to this team because all of a sudden they figured they can go high flying and score, and the bulk of that 15 out of 17 that they won was playing really solid defensively, and now all of a sudden, it is Christmas season. They're giving away everything, and that is not the way, if they're going to play like that when the playoffs come around, they will lose in the first round because you cannot do that. You have to play a better constructed defensive game. And I don't think that the injuries and the absences of certain players are the reason. I think overall this team has been sort of lax defensively over, let's say, the last week and a half.
Chris Daniels, Lam Knott, Michael, Matthew, and Alino Prespis all in the chat. This is the combo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario. OakRidgeFord.com. Looking for a new or pre-owned vehicle, you can get at me in community on Twitter, or you can reach me at the Leafs Convo at gmail.com. So when you look at the big picture, the Leafs are among the best in the league, and they're scoring more of late. Matthews, 18, 19 goals now. Nylander, Tavares, and Matthews all 30-plus points. Right. And picking up the offense with number 16 on long-term injury, and that's by design, obviously, for financial purposes. But game to game, we have to look at this team and examine how it's developing. The points are nice. Being amongst the league's elite right now is nice, but that was to be expected based on the personnel on the roster. So, for those who may get a little upset at us or anyone else pointing out these defensive deficiencies, we have to respond with, when the chips are down and push comes to shove, it's the defense and a defensive structure and defensive responsibility that will take this team to the next level. Not only did they, pull off the throttle last night and get irresponsible defensively, they did it with a guy who was making his season debut in Peter Mrazek, right? He played really, really well, but they kind of threw him to the wolves late. And if it wasn't for that puck luck,
Right.
odds are they would have went to overtime and probably lost that thing. And today, this conversation amongst the many that are taking place with Leaf fans across the world would have been a lot more sour.
Well, it may have been his season debut in terms of it being a healthy goaltender, because he started the second game in Ottawa, got hurt, then came back and played against Detroit in late October.
Yeah, my mistake on that, but it's been a while.
Right. He's been out for 2 months collectively between 2 injuries. So, it's easy to forget that Peter Mrazek has played in blue and white. But he played really well yesterday. But and 2 of the 4 goals were goals that, are seeing eye goals. The tying goal by Jake McCabe was through a screen. In total, he played really well, and he felt healthy afterward, which is an extremely important part. But just going back to the point about them sort of taking the foot off the gas. Yeah, you're up 4-1. You're up 5-1 against Columbus. I get that you've had like these massive first periods where you score 3 goals in both games. It's just the usual tendency mentally to say, okay, not check out, but say, okay, well, all we have to do is play a strict defensive game, not allow them to get to the front of the net, just play smart, and we'll win this game. Well, there's a disconnect between what their brain is telling them and what they're actually doing, because they seem to sort of check out, and they're allowing the other teams to carry the play to them. Against Columbus, they were up 5-1 after 2 or 5-1. They gave up a goal early in the third period to make it 5-2, another goal with 3 minutes left to make it 5-3, and then a goal with a second left. So the game really was not in jeopardy. Last night, this game was they were up 4-1 in the middle of the second period, allowed a goal late in the second, and then 2 goals in the third, and the game was tied. And if the error or the miscue off the boards hadn't happened, that game would have gone to overtime, and we don't know how it would have ended up. So they really have dodged a couple bullets in terms of sort of playing incomplete efforts. And that's the thing. We've said during that streak, they were playing complete games. You have to play complete 60-minute games. And they, I'd say, since that Colorado game, which may have made them drunk in terms of, we can outscore our problems. Maybe you can during the regular season, but when you get to the playoffs, you can't do that crap. And that's why I think, when we'll talk about some lineup situations, they may need to upgrade in certain areas before the deadline.
Teddy out of Florida had to quit watching the game in the third, couldn't handle the self-destruction. This hits home the point that most Leaf fans who've endured and who've felt the pain through the last several years, if not decades, and Teddy's 100 years old, so he remembers the team when Ace Bailey and King Clancy were playing. So, but again, regardless of the greater success that the team is showing for this season, these games in which there is a complete meltdown, harken back to shittier times and bring back crappy memories. And the worst of late is the 3-1 disaster with the Montreal Canadiens in the last playoff, where they gave up the series lead and then just fell apart. So you can't blame fans for still remaining skeptical, no matter what the landscape looks like right now, and knowing what this team has done and has not been able to do. This is going to be an ongoing struggle in terms of the emotion of a fan and how you stay positive and believe, but are reconciling and trying to contend with and maybe even suppress some of the expectations that failure will ultimately be the outcome for this team.
Well, Leafs Nation is still going through the throes of PTSD. So
exactly.
So I mean, it took every bit of self-control for me to not say on Twitter 4-1 the worst lead in hockey, because they were up 4-1, just like Game 7 against Boston. Just you have to you go and get flashbacks every time that lead is there, and they blow it. And unfortunately, 9 years ago or 8 years ago, that they didn't come back from that, and last night they did. It was a regular season game, but you just have to realize that, and I think they do realize what they're doing, and why they're having these issues right now. But it's up to them to correct it. Sheldon Keefe has been, even when they were winning, he's like, I don't like this game. Great, we're scoring goals, but it's covering up the greater issue. And the greater issue here is the ability to win games, and to win games playing the right type of hockey. And they need to be able to play really good defensively, and have that offense score enough goals to win, but they don't need to score 8 goals to win.
Yeah, when you're putting more pucks in the net on the power play, that is going to, lend to a perception that you're scoring more. And statistically, the Leafs have certainly increased their offensive value over the last month and a bit. Has it come at the expense of shittier defense? I don't think one is meant to derail the other. However, as Sheldon Keefe is concerned with, and you've pointed out, and many have seen, that over the last couple of weeks, the defense has loosened up a little bit. I mean, Dermott and Sandin injured, but even with those guys back, the overall structure and that complete defensive responsibility has waned. In the comment here, Jeremy W. has brought up something that you and I were discussing before we went live. Justin Holl, on the other hand, he's lost and definitely needs a change of scenery. So why don't we talk a little bit about Holl and his affiliation with Muzzin, and how against Tampa recently it looked pretty disastrous.
Well, at the beginning of the season, everybody recognized that Muzzin and Holl were really struggling. There was some question of whether Muzzin was injured, because they just, last year they were the shutdown pairing. They were steady. On most nights they were really good. Early on this year, they were terrible. Holl, when he was taken out of the lineup, was -7, and basically they benched him and they started putting Liljegren in, and then they started putting Dermott in, and only after about, I would say, 4 or 5 games did Holl come back in the lineup, and he played well with Muzzin, and his plus minus went from -7 to +3 or 4. But over the last few games, especially the game against Tampa, he was dreadful. And Muzzin and Holl were on the ice for the first 3 goals. 1 was a power play goal, 2 were 5-on-5. And at that point, Sheldon Keefe moved up Timothy Liljegren with Muzzin, and demoted Holl to the bottom pairing with Kristen Rubins. I think Liljegren had played really well last night, so maybe they stick with that for a while. Holl, on the other hand, and this is bizarre, and they asked Keefe after the game, the goal that made it 4-3 on Kubalik, that Kubalik scored. Rubins was beaten to the puck, but was basically even with the Chicago player, and for some unknown reason, Holl drifts over to help his defense partner, leaving the trailing guy, wide open. And what happens? The Chicago forward dishes it to Kubalik, and he blows it by Mrazek.
What do you attribute that to? He's just not good enough.
He's covering up for. Well, I mean, if it was Muzzin, he probably doesn't do that but he's supposedly covering up for a rookie defenseman, and he's overextending himself. And all he needs to do is play his own position. I think Rubins would have knocked the puck away, and if he hadn't knocked the puck away, Mrazek was on that player. You prevent what you do defensively in this league is you prevent options. If you got a guy coming in on a 2-on-1, the defenseman, takes one player and lets the goalie take the other one. On the Taves goal, Holl sat back and basically didn't give Mrazek any option, and Taves beats him on his first shot. He's really regressed defensively, and
why is that?
I don't know.
Is it psychological? Like his situation now, the support around him now isn't worse than it was last year, and the team is doing well. It had been collectively defensively responsible. This seems like there's a problem with this guy's head.
Well, remember, they protected 8 players, 8 skaters, and 1 goaltender for the expansion draft to protect Holl, because they protected Muzzin, Brody.
Oh, he's feeling the pressure. He's the chosen one.
Well, no, but I think maybe, could there be some complacency there that he thinks safe? They protected me. I don't know. All I know is, and this was the unfair thing. After that goal, after the one that Kubalik scored, they went to 5 defensemen, and they didn't sit Holl. They sat Rubens. And after the game, Keefe said, "Well, I was just taking it easy on the kid," meaning, it was maybe the pressure of the situation. No, the pressure of the situation got to the guy who's been getting burned the last couple games. So right now they really don't have any options, in the sense that, Sandin is out with the knee injury, and we can talk about that and that ridiculous Winnipeg game.
Yeah, Holl's got 1 point this season, Mike.
Yeah. He's not going to be he's not going to be a point generator.
I know, but it's indicative of how little impact he seems to have. I mean, on an offensive team and defensive-minded defensemen all around him, he should be able to have a little bit more. Again, we're not counting on Justin Holl to put up points, but he's got 1 point amongst one of the best teams offensively in the league. And, about complacency, I just don't know how a guy like that with no pedigree or credibility or, major expectation, and money laid at his feet, how he could be complacent knowing that he's got the team by the balls, right? He's a replaceable guy. So I'm just speculating in terms of complacency. I'm trying
to read his mental makeup here. All I know is they protected him. Maybe he thought his job was safe. But right now with Sandin hurt and Dermott hurt, they need Holl in the lineup. But honestly, I've been impressed in 3 games with what Rubens has shown. I know the organization likes him, but I think the direction that they may end up going here, if it's feasible cap wise, is going out and getting a defenseman before the deadline. Now that may mean moving out a Holl or moving out a Dermott, who both have another year left in their contracts. I don't know. I mean, the read on that situation, we'll have to wait until March, until after the Olympics, if they do go to the Olympics. But right now, I'm saying they're not good enough defensively on that second pairing. They need the top two pairings to be dependable, especially in the playoffs. And if you want to look at Montreal, they had Weber, they had Sherrod, they had Edmondson, they had Petrie. And then the 5th and 6th guys were guys that, they're going to play 9, 10, 11 minutes. And I think actually Sandin and Liljegren have played well enough that they can play more minutes, but you need steadiness on that second pairing, and you're not getting it. And the answer is not with the Marlies like Joe Ducek or Brennan Mantle or any of these other guys. It's probably something from external to the organization.
OG's Converts. A question for you: are you more inclined to watch the Leafs Convo after a win or a loss? Winning versus losing, does it affect how and/or when you join us? We appreciate the feedback. You can answer that question in community. YouTube.com/the Leafs Convo. We're always wanting to hear from you about the things that Mike and I talk about, the things you want us to discuss, gear, advice to us as on how we can make this project better. I mean, we've been going forever and ever and ever, but we are not adverse to improving through the things you ask us to do. So if you could answer that question for us in community, youtube.com/the Leafs Convo, that would mean a lot. Again, Mike, in the big picture, you can look at this team and go, hey, tops in the league, right? But the standards are high. The standards are high. And I mean, you can achieve and aesthetically make it look great, but the goings on and the inner workings, the minutia, may not be satisfactory to those who, the pressure weighs on the most, and that would be Kyle Dubas, Sheldon Keefe, the management, and then the fans. We feel the pressure too. So talking about a team and the way it's loosening up defensively, not to our liking, certainly not to the organization's liking, isn't out of sorts, right? This makes sense to discuss this kind of stuff because we expect the offense to be there, right? And if we could give up in a perfect world, if we can give up a little bit of offense to have these guys be the team be completely defensively responsible night in and night out and dominate that way, I would take that every single time. And we know that their chances of being successful, ultimately getting through the playoffs and winning a Stanley Cup would be much greater than just a band of offensive lunatics out there playing fire wagon hockey, right? Scoring a bunch, giving a bunch back, starting like shit and then firing back in the last period to tie a game. That's not how you win, right? It's getting the lead, holding it, locking it down, and doing it night in and night out. Right. We've seen the Leafs be able to do a bit of that, but now it seems like the personnel on the defensive end of things is starting to wobble a little bit, and the organization is going to have its work cut out for it to make sure this situation isn't exactly rectified, but emboldened and strengthened. And maybe moving out a guy like Justin Holl, who doesn't seem like he's ready for prime time, is part of that process.
It might be, it might not be. I mean, we know that there'll have to be some moving around of pieces to be able to fit a new player. And plus also the Leafs only have 3 draft picks for next year. So more than likely, if they're going to trade for a rental defenseman, it's probably going to be a pick in 2023 or 2020. Yeah, 2023. So, they don't want to mortgage too much of the future. And they do have players coming on defense like Topi Niemela, the Finnish kid who, he's only 19. So it's probably going to be at least a couple of years before he is going to be playing in the NHL. But really, I mean, it's not just Justin Holl. I mean, I know that, people are, believe me, the days of me like ripping on Corey Cross and ripping on Anders Eriksson or Jyrke Lume or Aki Berg, they were bad, but it wasn't just all them. It was also the team around them. And this team has played better structurally, defensively, most of the season, at least after the slow start for that stretch. They played discipline, but it's also the forwards. And I hate to bring it up, but with Mitch Marner out, more of a onus on offense was put on the remaining 3 of the core 4. And Tavares and Matthews have played really well, have scored regularly. And so is William Nylander. But against Tampa Bay, Nylander made a couple really just inexcusable giveaways, passes that shouldn't be made. And that's what I mean. It's like, okay, for most of the season, you've been hustling. You've been playing good two-way. You can't let the side down. You have to keep going and keep doing that, because those little blips, especially when the playoffs come on, you can't win in the playoffs playing the undisciplined giveaway type of game that they have played over the last week or so. Maybe you get that stuff out of your game when playoff time comes around, but honestly, they haven't been able to do that over the last 5 years. And that's why, Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe are worried about that, because they may know that their future lies in them getting past the first round this year.
Yeah.
They have to pay attention to detail.
Yeah, every game the Leafs play is another level of training, another opportunity to train themselves to be better, prepare themselves for what lies ahead. And we know that the result this season is and achieving a positive result this season is more important than really ever before. So the Leafs are heading out west, Mike. Edmonton, Calgary, those are going to be some tough games. Vancouver will be tough, and they'll finish up a 4-game run out west at Seattle, taking on this expansion team. This could go either way. They could go out west and surprise the Oilers, surprise the Flames, battle with Vancouver and take it to the Kraken. Or can you imagine an 0-3-1 road trip, losing to this ragtag group from Seattle? Not to spread dread here, Mike, but they didn't exactly wow everybody with their final game at Scotiabank Arena before embarking on this trip. What are you expecting?
Well, I mean, Edmonton has. I'm just struggling to find what. Edmonton has not played well lately. What a shock when Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl don't score. They have issues because defensively they're still.
Doesn't mean it's going to be easy for the Leafs out there.
No.
You know that.
I'm just saying that they were playing red hot about 3 weeks, 3 weeks ago, and now all of a sudden they've slumped. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, because they'll work themselves up in a lather for the Leafs, and the Leaf fans in the building will energize the Oilers, and you have to be on guard for Connor McDavid doing one of his 1-on-4 rushes, emulating Gilbert Perreault. And they're playing Zach Hyman for the first time, and they were asked about that yesterday. So that's going to be a tough game. Calgary will be extremely tough because they're very physical.
Mm-hmm.
Vancouver, of course, was arguably the worst team in the league, and then they fire everybody and bring in Bruce Boudreau, and now they've won 3 in a row. And obviously, second of back-to-back against Seattle. So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be a tough road trip. I mean, I think if they go 500 on it, they should be happy, especially without Marner in the lineup and with their current defensive issues. But I mean, somebody asked the question, and I think it's a good point in the sense that, okay, you're going on the road against tough competition, that would make your team more apt to play that disciplined defensive style that got them the wins. You can't play fast and loose against Edmonton. If Keefe said yesterday, if you do that, look at the guys that they've got, you're going to be in trouble. So maybe it's the best time for them to go on the road. Their schedule, after all those home games has been very heavy on the road in December, and that's what they're going to need to win. And they just won 7 games in a row until losing last weekend, the back-to-backs against Minnesota and Winnipeg. And I have to bring this up. The Jason Spezza suspension is an absolute friggin' travesty. They were saying it was a retaliation hit on Pionk. Well, Pionk's hit was a retaliation hit on Rasmus Sandin, and Pionk only got 2 games because Sandin wasn't seriously hurt. So, the suspension should be reduced. He's already served 3 games. I guess the NHL is reviewing it on Tuesday.
Yeah, but where did they, from what point and what philosophy and what methodology and what geography are you viewing this incident from? Right? Because if they're reviewing the review 3 games into the suspension, that must tell you something. Like, the guy who's making the decisions, is he coming from a place? Is he coming from a place of complete impartiality? Because this again, if everyone thinks it's a complete joke, except for the guy who stamped it, then And
Well,
now they're reviewing it. Come on, it's bullshit. And
Hockey Night in Canada did a breakdown of it, and in the intermission.
How do you trust the system? How do you trust this process going forward? If this is the kind of stupid decision that's made, that's being reviewed halfway through the suspension. Sorry, Mike.
Well, okay, they suspended him for 6 games, and that automatically clicks in the potential of an appeal and a review. The appeal goes to Bettman first, and Bettman will never undercut his player safety. So then it goes to an independent arbitrator. But to your point, I agree. He's already served 3 games. In my mind, probably the suspension should have been 2 or 3 at the most. And now what the Hockey Night in Canada showed in the intermission is they used the justification of Spezza losing his mind when Sandin got hurt as his mindset that he was going to get Pionk back. I don't think his intention was to knock Pionk out of the game. They said Pionk was injured. He got suspended 2 games. I think after the 2 games, he was back in the lineup, so he wasn't hurt. Unlike Rasmus Sandin, who's out 2 to 3 weeks with a knee injury, and it could have very well been an ACL or something as bad as that, because Rasmus Sandin had the gall to hit Blake Wheeler last April.
Mm-hmm.
That was the retaliation. There was their memory. How hockey players are. Their memory is long. They said, okay, we're going to get that kid back for that double cheek check that he did on Blake Wheeler. And there you go. Pionk, that it was dirty. And I'm telling you right now, March 31st, I'm going to that game in Toronto against Winnipeg. The memory of the Leafs will be long as well. But I think that more than likely Spezza's suspension will get reduced. But there's no guarantee because they this is a guy that has never been suspended. They just they've suspended Brad Marchand and then forget to suspend him because it was 18 months ago. The system is really broken.
Mm-hmm. But who wouldn't want to go after a guy named Pionk? He's a fucking Pionk. Who wouldn't want to go after a guy like that? Come on, Mike.
Yeah,
seriously. So, we're going on about the defense, and you're like Holl, Muzzin, Liljegren, Riley, Rubens, Brody, Sandin, Dermott. Is that? I know we're still not even into Christmas yet. Is that group? Is that a champ? Is that a Stanley Cup winning defensive core? And would you not have to ask and expect and demand your elite group of forwards to dial it back a bit and play a complete 200-foot 3-zone defensive style of game to support these guys and unproven goaltenders if you're going to go all the way and succeed?
Well, I mean, a lot of people believe that Florida is one of the top teams in the East that could be the representative in the East for the Stanley Cup, and they have like Gustav Forsling and Radko Gudas and Mackenzie Weegar, who's playing really well. But it's not like Tampa. I mean, Tampa is the exception to the rule. When you have McDonough and Sergachev and Hedman, I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches. If this team is going to advance,
and they win with them.
If this team is going to advance in the playoffs, they're going to need the Sandins and the Liljegrens to grow up, and I think they are developing really well and play better than they're playing now, and that's very possible. They're very talented young players, but I do think that you don't want one injury to force Travis Dermott into a top 4 role. I mean, I think Travis Dermott's a good defenseman, but I don't think he's a top 4 defenseman. They may need to trade one of those players to make room for another player. There are a few veteran D that are going to be available at the deadline. So, I mean, that's 3 months away, but in the here and the now with Dermott and Sandin out, I think Rubens could be an NHLer down the road, but not right now. And, Holl is having his issues. So right now the defensive issues are coming to the forefront for the Leafs.
Because we have all been jaded through failure after failure. Anytime this team shows vulnerability, it's going to be questioned.
Yes.
That's a given, right? And we'll always wonder until a benchmark has been reached if the composition of this team is right. And that's just that's what fans do. You're constantly wondering.
Well,
it's all fine and dandy. Does everything look great right now? You know what? I'd rather them be amongst the top teams in the league than amongst the worst, because it would be a complete cluster F, as you know.
well,
However, the expectations are high. The bar is high because this team has to achieve. And until then, and again, I'm repeating myself, until then, we will question how they're getting there, with whom they're getting there, and in what way is the organization put together in the most professional of fashions and most professional of processes, right? So that's just what we do. Anyway, let's wrap her up here, Mike. Any last points?
Yeah, just that I said this on Twitter earlier in the week. The big question marks about what Kyle Dubas did during the offseason are Mrazek, who has been injured for most of the year, and Ritchie, who has one goal and has struggled, but I think is playing better of late. If you look at the budget signings that they made, Kasha, who's scoring really well, David Kampf, who's playing third line center, checking and penalty killing really well, and Michael Bunting, who's now on the top line wing with Austin Matthews. Those are three signings that cost less than $1.5 million a year that are with Kasha. He's a 1-year deal, but he's an RFA, so they'll qualify him. They're 2-year deals, and all three have been extremely successful. That's a commentary on what Kyle Dubas has done. It's been a success. Now, you want Mrazek to stay healthy. And if he does, then he's going to take a sizable chunk of games away from Jack Campbell, and that's needed because Campbell has been overworked the last few months, and you need Ritchie to step up. But in general, all the moves that most of the moves that Kyle Dubas made have been successful.
Well, the success of the season isn't incumbent upon Ritchie having a career year and scoring 40 goals and doing things he's never done before. His one goal hasn't really affected the team negatively. And if he's doing things in other ways and playing with a defensive mindset, I'll take that. Mrazek, what can you do? He gets injured. Matthews could have been out 40 games, right? An injury is an injury. It's not Mrazek's fault. If he's back in the mix and can stay healthy, he'll be worth maybe not all of the money, but as we've discussed, no one's really worth all of the money they're getting paid for, unless all of that money takes the team that takes the player that you're supporting and the team that he represents all the way to the championship. And even then, as they're parading that cup down Bay Street, we will still say that they are overpaid. OG's Converse, thank you so much for joining us for the Sunday Spectacular. If you can, hit the like button on the YouTube content that you are consuming. You can also hit the bell icon to get updates and notifications as to what we're doing next. And if you feel like doing it, go ahead and subscribe to the channel as well. We're pushing up each and every day with more subscribers and more people joining the good ship, the Leafs Convo, and we appreciate that very much. We're week to week here with the project, but we'd like to add a few more shows throughout the week. So with your support and your viewership, that will certainly be the intention. So Mike, that's it. You sure?
Yep. I'm good.
All right. For Mike, I'm Norm. Talk to you soon, guys.